All right. Tonight we were discussing Saint Joseph. I actually remember very distinctly my first time praying to Saint Joseph because my parents were trying to sell their house quickly. So my mom searched up prayers to sell your house on the internet. It turns out Saint Joseph is the patron saint of among many other things, home sellers and buyers. And one of the suggestions was to bury a statue of Saint Joseph completely upside down in your yard to help you sell your house. However, this seemed a bit superstitious, so instead we just prayed a novena to Saint Joseph and stuck a picture of him and baby Jesus on our fridge. And lo and behold, our house sold. Aside from this, though, I never really considered praying to Saint Joseph or asking him for help with anything until much later in life. Now, of course, none of Joseph's words are recorded in the Bible, and because of that, it can be easier to turn to Jesus or Mary or other saints like St. Augustine or St. Francis, who left behind so many pieces of writing and so many stories. However, to be close to Jesus is to be close to those to whom he is closest, and Joseph is one of those people. On top of that, Joseph led a life probably much more similar to our own lives than many saints. He was married and had a family rather than being a priest or a monk, and nothing he said in life was recorded for long after him. He was a simple father. Each week, he had to complete his work as a carpenter to support himself and Mary and Jesus. He had to take turns calming baby Jesus at night when Mary needed sleep. He had to hold Jesus' hand when he was learning to walk. He had to turn around and find Jesus when Jesus stayed behind in the temple without telling anyone. And he had to teach Jesus how to use his tools without cutting or injuring himself, and eventually to craft useful and beautiful items out of wood. And the crazy thing is that Jesus chose all of this. He chose to see God in every part of his life. And this is the thing that stands out most about St. Joseph, that he chose to be with God, to trust him, and to remain humbly obedient to him in the surprising moments and in the dull and routine moments. Now, you probably remember pretty well, when the angel told Joseph to take Mary as his wife, what did he do? He married her. And when the angel told him to flee to Egypt, he packed up his family and he fled to Egypt. Now, for context, fleeing to Egypt is not a short trip. One way, this journey is about 250 miles, and walking 8 hours a day, that takes about 1 month. And don't forget that Joseph had left all his other family and friends and any belongings or property he had back in Nazareth. Talk about trust and obedience. Yet even when he returned to Nazareth and settled down again with Mary and Jesus, Joseph committed his life to being a husband and father and to doing that well. And there's nothing really glamorous or thrilling about that vocation. It involved a lot of working, sleeping, eating, spending time with the family, going to the synagogue every week, and praying day in and day out. Sounds kind of familiar, right? Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with taking a vacation with your friends or family. I love going on exciting and new adventures. My brother and I go camping every year in December for our birthdays, and we have some pretty crazy stories because camping in December can be really, really cool. I've snowshoed at night across fresh snow trying to find a campsite in 11-degree weather with one functional headlamp, and I've paddled a canoe 12 miles in the rain to camp on a dock in the middle of one of the world's biggest swamps. And that was all great and exciting at the time. But nobody ever got to heaven because he had an exciting life. The way to heaven is saying to God, not my will, but your will be done. It is by saying yes to Jesus entering every part of our lives. And it's easy to think that because we have quiet lives or aren't doing any great deeds like moving to India to serve the poor or preaching the gospel to crowds of people, that we are not great Christians. But that isn't true. St. Therese of Lisieux once said, "Our Lord does not so much look at the greatness of our actions, or even at their difficulty, as at the love with which we do them." St. Joseph is actually the patron saint of the entire church. And maybe part of the reason for this is that he chose not to travel the world or pursue an education or write a book, but to be a father, to go to work and to come home and take care of his wife and son, because that was what God asked him to do. He's gone through our daily struggles for holiness, and he did it next to 2 people born without original sin. So he knows exactly what kind of graces and help to ask for. And so my challenge to you is the next time you're struggling with the tasks of your daily life, whether it's school or work or at home, when you're asking yourself why you have to do the same things over and over and over, Ask instead for some help from that carpenter who chose to allow Jesus into all of those very moments, and whom Jesus chose to be his own example of trust and humble obedience.